Welcome to the press conference following the video conference of the President of the European Council. We are joined remotely by the President of the European Commission, and we'll organize a Q&A session following the President's speech first. But first, let me point out that we will publish the conclusions of the President of the European Council on our website shortly. There's translation in French, English and German. And now I turn to the President.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Today we met by video conference to discuss the increasingly concerning situation in Belarus. And we express one clear message. The European Union stands in solidarity with the people of Belarus. And we don't accept impunity. On August 9th, Belarus held elections. These elections were neither free nor fair and did not meet international standards. We don't recognize the results presented by the Belarus authorities. The people of Belarus deserve better. They deserve the democratic right to choose their leaders and shape their future. In the wake of these elections, Belarusians have taken to the streets with mass protests and strikes, from ordinary families to students and factory workers. The violence against these peaceful protesters was shocking and unacceptable. We condemn this brutality and expect a full and transparent investigation. Any violence must be avoided. This includes any repression and violence against those seeking to engage in national dialogue efforts. Strong civil society and independent media are key elements. Civil society and opposition actors engaged in discussions of political transition must be protected from arbitrary arrests and violence. The protests in Belarus are not about geopolitics. This is in the first place a national crisis. This is about the right of the people to freely elect their leadership. We stand firmly behind the right of the Belarusian people to determine their own fate, and the EU will impose shortly sanctions on a substantial number of individuals responsible for violence, repression and election fraud. We call on the Belarusian authorities to find a peaceful way out of the crisis by ending the violence, de-escalating tensions and launching an inclusive national dialogue. All parties, including third states, should support such a process. We will continue to follow the situation closely and stand ready to contribute to efforts to peacefully end the crisis. The EU fully supports OSCE proposals for dialogue in Belarus and is ready to provide assistance to further them. To conclude, I would like to address the people of Belarus directly. We stand by your side in your desire to exercise your fundamental democratic rights and in your desire for a peaceful, democratic and prosperous future. We had also the occasion to raise the situation in the Eastern Mediterranean. And this question and the relations with Turkey were raised by different member states. We expressed our full solidarity with Greece and Cyprus, and we called and reaffirmed our previous conclusions on the illegal drilling activities. We agreed to revert to those issues during our meeting in September. All options will be on the table. Finally, we raised the events in Mali. The events in Mali are of deep concern and can have a destabilizing impact on the entire region and on the fight against terrorism. Nous avons eu l'occasion également d'évoquer la situation au Mali. Nous sommes extrêmement préoccupés par les développements durant les dernières heures. Nous considérons que la stabilité de la région et du Mali et la lutte contre le terrorisme doivent demeurer des priorités absolues. Nous appelons à la libération immédiate des prisonniers et au retour à l'état de droit. Nous considérons aussi que nous devons poursuivre la coopération étroite avec la CEDEAO et avec les différentes institutions africaines impliquées pour tenter de dégager une solution qui soit directement liée aux aspirations du peuple malien. Je vous remercie.
Thank you, Mr. President. We will now turn to the President of the European Commission. Madam President.
Thank you, Barend. Thank you, Charles. The people of Belarus want change, and they want it now. And we are impressed by the courage of the people of Belarus. For exactly 10 days since the presidential election took place, the people of Belarus have taken to the streets in unprecedented numbers. They demand the release of all unlawfully detained prisoners, the prosecution of those responsible for police brutality. They want freedom of speech and assembly, and they want democracy and new presidential elections, as these elections were neither fair nor free. Today, we gave them 3 clear messages. Firstly, we stand by the people of Belarus who want fundamental freedoms and democracy. Secondly, we will sanction all those responsible for violence, repression, and falsification of the results of the election. The people of Belarus took peacefully to the streets, and the authorities answered with violence, and this cannot be accepted. And thirdly, we are ready to accompany peaceful democratic transition of power in Belarus. Firstly, on the support. We already provide a lot of support to Belarus through the Eastern Partnership. But now it is more important than ever to be there for the Belarus people and to reprogram money away from the authorities and towards civil society and vulnerable groups. The European Commission will mobilize now an additional 53 million euros to support the Belarusian people in these challenging times. 2 million euro to assist the victims of repression and unacceptable state violence. 1 million euro to support civil society and independent media. And 50 million euros of coronavirus emergency support for the health sector, for example, hospitals, or the procurement of medical equipment, but also for small and medium enterprises, or vulnerable groups, or social services. But as we increase our support to the people of Belarus, we must be firm with those that rigged the elections and are repressing brutally demonstrators. So secondly, there was unanimous support for the EU to be working on sanctions against those responsible for what is taking place. Targeted sanctions on specific persons without hurting the people of Belarus. The Commission stands ready to support, and the list of people submitted to sanctions should be adopted as soon as possible. And thirdly, we stand ready to engage in all possible ways to accompany peaceful democratic transition of power in Belarus. We support the opening of dialogue between authorities and the opposition. And there was strong support for the role of the OSCE. The OSCE might be seeking ways to facilitate dialogue in Belarus. Belarus is member of the OSCE. It's not so much on mediation, but on opening communication channels within Belarus. Finally, the demonstrations in Belarus are not against any neighboring country or entity. The demonstrations in Belarus are for the rights of the people of Belarus. This is about the Belarusian people and their legitimate right to determine the future path of their country. The European Union stands at the side of the Belarusian people. Violence has to stop. Only an inclusive dialogue will find solutions. The future of Belarus must be decided by the Belarusian people in Belarus. It must grow from within. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President, for your message, and we'll turn to the Q&A session now. We have a lot of people tuning in. Please let me state on beforehand, could you please state clearly whom you want to address your question to, so that it makes it easier to switch from one side to the other. We'll start with John Chalmers from Reuters. John, you have the floor. Can you hear us, John?
Yes, hello. Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Yes, hi. And this is a question for the President of the European Council. In the recent hours while the EU leaders were meeting, President Lukashenko ordered the police to put down protests in Minsk. And this signals an escalation of the situation there. Did you take this into account during your conversations? And what is your response to the latest developments?
Our message is very clear. Stop the violence, and we don't accept the impunity. We don't tolerate the impunity, and that's why we took this very important decision. It's our intention to decide sanctions, targeted sanctions, in order to target the individuals, authorities involved in the process of violence or in the falsification of the elections. And we will continue in the next hours, also in the next days, to follow closely the situation. We don't accept the violence, and the fact that we took this decision to have this meeting today with a very strong and united message, it sends to the authorities in Belarus a very clear message from the European Union.
Thank you. Next question for Caroline Meta-Beisel. Caroline.
Thank you very much. I'm hearing. Is it just?
Could you raise your volume a bit? Yes, that's.
Yes, I'll try. Is it better now? My question goes to which one of you wants to answer, actually, because you have repeated, both of you have said that you want to work on sanctions on those responsible. And I was wondering whether you have talked about whether Mr. Lukashenko himself should be included on this list. And also I'm interested on the time frame, how soon you think you will be able to talk about the content of the list and to agree on this list. Thank you very much.
There is a process, there is a legal process at the European level. We had today the political discussion, and we sent a very clear signal about our decision to implement sanctions. But of course, it will be the responsibility at the European levels of the different committees involved in the process to formally take the decision. And I repeat, we will shortly impose sanctions against a substantial number of individuals responsible for violence, and the question about President Lukashenko will be deliberated in the framework of this process.
Madam President, maybe you would like to add?
Yes, thank you. It is exactly as the President of the Council said. The Commission stands ready to support because it is a very detailed process with a lot of scrutiny. but the Ministers for Foreign Affairs, now the European Council, were very clear, and we will work hard to be ready as soon as possible with a list of specific persons targeted for sanctions.
Another question now for Jennifer Rankin of The Guardian. Jennifer. Are you there?
Yes, I'm there. Can you hear me?
Yes, if you switch on your camera, it makes it nicer for us.
Okay, just bear with me. My camera is switched on. You can see me. Okay, thank you very much. This is a question to President Michel. I'm sorry for the echo, but I hope it's clear. President Michel, you spoke to President Putin yesterday. Can you say whether you see the Russian government as an ally or as a destabilizing force in resolving the situation in Belarus? And what is it exactly that you would like the Russian government to be doing? Thank you.
We sent a very clear message. We think that the future of Belarus has to be decided by the people in Belarus, not in Brussels, not in Moscow. And we think there is a national crisis. And we would like to encourage all the positive efforts in order to make a national inclusive dialogue possible. And we had the occasion with President Putin to discuss the situation in Belarus. And I think it's important from both sides, in Moscow, in Brussels, that we are convinced that we need to support all the positive efforts in order to find a peaceful solution, in order to guarantee a democratic process in Belarus. And I repeat that for us, for the European Union, it's very clear that the people in Belarus, they have the fundamental right to elect freely their leadership.
Next question is for Richard Jowziak. I hope I pronounce your name correctly. Richard, can you hear us?
Absolutely, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes.
And very good pronunciation, by the way, Barents. Thank you. Following up from Jennifer Rankin's question to Mr. Michel, did you get any assurances from Mr. Putin yesterday that Russia will not interfere in Belarus, military or otherwise? And for Mrs. von der Leyen, since you don't see the elections as free and fair, are you demanding a rerun of these elections? And yeah, let's go for those two.
The talks yesterday with Vladimir Putin, it was the occasion for me to express a very strong European conviction. We are convinced indeed that it's important to give the possibility in Belarus through a national dialogue to find a solution. And indeed, I repeat that we want to avoid external negative interferences. And we had the occasion with President Putin to have a very clear and very frank exchange of views and exchange of opinions about the current situation. And probably you have observed the last hours some statements made by the Kremlin in the direction that they don't intend in those current circumstances to intervene in Belarus at the military level.
Turning to the President of the European Commission. Madam President.
Yes, thank you, Barend. It is the Belarusian people who are demanding a rerun of truly free and fair elections. And I want to be very clear, and this is the attitude we have, that we support the Belarusian people in them choosing the path they want to have, they want to go down. So it's their decision on where they want to lead their country to, but we support them, but we have the respect that the Belarusian people themselves are free to decide and to determine how they want to shape their country and how they see the future of Belarus.
Now we're going to take two more questions. First of all, Jacopo Barigazzi from Politico. Jacopo, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, please.
I have, thank you, Barend. I have a couple of questions for President Michel. First of all, whether in your contacts you reach out also to our transatlantic partners to coordinate any kind of effort. And secondly, what do you think that will avoid a repetition of the situation that we had in Ukraine with the Russian annexation of Crimea and so on, whether the EU has learned from what happened there to avoid a repetition of this. Thanks.
Oui. Je vais maintenant répondre en français à cette question particulière pour indiquer que, naturellement, nous avons comme Union européenne notre propre stratégie et notre propre manière de travailler sur le plan géopolitique et sur le plan international. Mais il est certain que nous avons des contacts avec les États-Unis concernant la situation dans la région et nous mesurons que l'approche qui est décidé aujourd'hui, c'est-à-dire des sanctions ciblées. Je veux le dire avec clarté, il ne s'agit pas de sanctions contre le peuple bélarusse, puisque, à l'inverse, nous voulons soutenir la liberté fondamentale du peuple bélarusse de choisir son propre avenir et de choisir son leadership de manière libre et transparente. Et nous avons évidemment des échanges avec l'ensemble de nos partenaires, y compris avec les États-Unis, compte tenu de la situation dans la région. Mais vous avez compris que aujourd'hui, nous avons affirmé dans l'unité une stratégie commune, une position commune qui est très très claire et qui repose sur ces quelques principes. Stop à la violence. Nous ne reconnaissons pas les résultats des élections présentés par les autorités. Nous appelons à un dialogue national inclusif et nous sommes déterminés à faire en sorte qu'il n'y ait pas d'interférence qui empêche le peuple en Bélarus d'être à même de choisir son propre avenir et son propre leadership dans le cadre d'un processus qui doit être démocratique et prendre en considération la liberté de la presse.
Last question now for Athanasios. Athanasios, can you hear us? Please turn on your microphone, Athanasios.
I think that's fine now, yes.
It's working now.
Thanks for the question. Could we, this question is for both, if I may, could we see today's decision and discussion as a prequel to the discussion that will follow up on Turkey in the next couple of weeks and in the end of September? And I specifically refer to the issue of sanctions, since at least 2 member states feel right now, and I think that was expressed in the teleconference as well, that the imminence of the situation of Belarus took, let's say, came to the forefront, while the other pressing issue towards 2 member states became, was lowered in intensity in the last couple of weeks. So should we expect the same sense of urgency in the issue of sanctions when you will discuss the issue of Turkey? That's what some of my viewers want to know. Thanks.
La solidarité du Conseil européen avec la Grèce et Chypre a été exprimée de manière très régulière et elle a été répétée aujourd'hui avec beaucoup de force. Je l'ai fait d'emblée dans mes propos introductifs. Et vous le savez, je l'ai annoncé formellement au mois de juillet, que nous avons l'intention de tenir un sommet européen spécial qui se déroulera de manière physique et non pas par vidéoconférence à Bruxelles. Et vous comprenez qu'il est important d'avoir un sommet physique pour aller dans le détail des échanges qui sont nécessaires entre nous afin de déterminer une stratégie claire, nette, forte, dans l'unité, en lien avec la relation entre l'Union européenne d'un côté et la Turquie de l'autre. Et dans ce cadre-là, je l'ai dit et je le répète, toutes les options seront sur la table. J'ai eu l'occasion d'être très impliqué durant les derniers jours, les dernières semaines, en contact étroit avec les autorités de Chypre, les autorités grecques, mais également avec d'autres pays européens extrêmement impliqués. J'ai eu l'occasion d'être en contact avec le secrétaire général de l'OTAN, puisqu'on voit qu'il y a des tensions entre des pays membres de l'Union européenne et la Turquie, qui est aussi membre de l'OTAN. Et j'ai eu l'occasion de m'entretenir revenir avec le président Erdogan et de dire toute la solidarité de l'Union européenne vis-à-vis de la Grèce et vis-à-vis de Chypre. Nous allons donc continuer à suivre de très près, jour après jour, la situation dans cette partie de la Méditerranée et nous allons veiller à démontrer que cette solidarité avec la Grèce et avec Chypre, elle n'est pas virtuelle, elle n'est pas théorique, elle est bien réelle. Et c'est le sens de ce sommet qui aura lieu au mois de septembre et qui sera l'occasion pour les 27 États membres, ensemble dans l'unité, d'aller dans la substance de la manière dont on veut envisager notre relation à l'avenir entre l'Union européenne et la Turquie.
Madam President, maybe you would like to add a couple of words.
Yes, thank you. There's little to add. Of course, these are two different situations because we have a long history with Turkey of opportunities, cooperation, but also conflicts. And it is very clear that the relationship with Turkey will be subject not only in Gimlich with the ministers of foreign affairs, but also on the table of the European Council. And as the President of the European Council said, all options will be on the table. For us is first and foremost important the willingness on all sides to engage in a problem-solving dialogue. This is the most important. There are problems out there, there are conflicts out there, and they should be solved together.
Thank you, Madam President and Mr. President. Please, to all of you, keep an eye out to our Council website this afternoon, where we will publish the conclusions of the President of the European Council following the video conference. Thanks again, and see you in September.